All right. Well, welcome to One Night Stand, which is a short, concentrated look at single artworks that are currently on view at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. I'm Kate Kunau, the curator of collections and exhibitions at the museum. So tonight we're going to be discussing Kara Walker's Occupation of Alexandria from Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War, Annotated, from 2005. And this is an offset lithograph and screen print seen here. So I selected this piece from the CRMA's current exhibition, The Collector's Eye, the collection of Tom C. Jackson and Joanne Stevens, which runs to January 15th, 2023. Tom and Joanne have an amazing collection of modern and contemporary works on paper. It includes many major artists like Roger Shimomura, Julie Maretu, John Baldessari, Enrique Chagoya, Joan Mitchell, and many others, including Kara Walker. So if you have not seen it already, come in and see it. To start with a little biography, Kara Elizabeth Walker was born in Stockton, California on November 26, 1969, and is an American contemporary painter, silhouettist, printmaker, installation artist, filmmaker, and professor who explores race, gender, sexuality, violence, and identity in her work. She is best known for her room-sized tableau of Black cut paper silhouettes, as we see here on the right. So historically, cut paper silhouettes were used to decorate 18th and 19th century middle-class homes. We see several examples of here. It was a way to do portraits of your family in a more affordable way than commissioning a full oil painting. So Walker appropriates this technique to stage scenes illustrating racial oppression, while interweaving Civil War iconography and racist Black stereotypes. She highlights the similar nature of silhouette and stereotype, in which complex details of individuals are reduced or generalized into easily recognizable outlines. So in 1997, Kara Walker was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship, commonly known as the Genius Grant. And at the age of 28, she became one of the youngest ever recipients of the award. She's been the Tepper Chair in Visual Arts at the Mason Gross School of Arts at Rutgers since 2015, and is today regarded as among the most prominent and acclaimed American artists working. So Walker's first piece that really came to the public's attention was her 1994 mural, Gone, an historical romance of a civil war as it occurred between the dusky thighs of one young negress and her heart. So this is a cut paper silhouette mural presenting an antebellum South filled with sex and slavery, and it was an immediate hit. It has been infamous and controversial and very popular in its time. The work's elaborate title, usually shortened just to Gone, refers to Margaret Mitchell's, of course, 1936 novel Gone with the Wind, which was set during the American Civil War. While Walker's narrative begins and ends with coupled figures, the chain of tragicomic, turbulent imagery refutes the promise of romance and confounds conventional attributions of power and oppression. As Walker says, the history of America is built on inequality, and this foundation of a racial inequality and a social inequality continues to this day. So the topic of our conversation, her occupation of Alexandria from Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War, is a combination of Walker's work with another image. So here we see some Harper's Weekly covers. So Harper's Weekly, a journal of civilization, was an American political magazine based in New York City. It was published by Harper and Brothers from 1857 until 1916. Was very, very popular during that time and featured foreign and domestic news, fiction, essays on many subjects, and humor alongside illustrations. Probably its peak years were during the Civil War, and it carried extensive coverage of the war, including many illustrations of events. Harper's Weekly was the most widely read journal in the US during that period. So as not to upset its very wide readership in the South, Harper's took a moderate editorial position on the issue of slavery prior to 1861 and the outbreak of the war. Publications that supported abolition referred to it as Harper's Weekly with Weakly. The Weekly had supported the Stephen Douglas presidential campaign against Abraham Lincoln, but as the American Civil War broke out, it fully turned to supporting Lincoln and the Union. A July 1863 article on the escaped slave Gordon included a photograph of his back, severely scarred from whippings, which provided many readers in the North their first visual experience of the brutality of slavery. This photograph and the accompanying engraving inspired many free Blacks in the North to enlist in the Union Army. So Kara Walker created a portfolio of 15 works based on these Harper Pictorial ones, 6 of which I have reproduced here. And these, as I said, were made from enlargements of prints from Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War. This compendium of prints was first published in 1866. It is still in print. You can still buy it on Amazon today. And her annotations, as we see examples of here, draw attention to people, events, and issues that have long been overlooked. So in this way, the artist activates the past in order to confront the reality of racial conflict and violence that still persists in the US today. Harper's pictorial history has actually inspired Kara Walker for a long time, both because of what it depicted and what it leaves out. And primarily what it leaves out is the experience of enslaved Black Americans. So here is an original copy of Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War. You can buy vintage versions like this. You can buy updated versions. It is still available. And here are some other examples of engravings from the book, The Pictorial History. So it covers a very wide swath of the Civil War. Back to Kara's for a moment. But the particular print that overlays Harper's print of the occupation of Alexandria, excuse me, this particular print, Kara Walker's version, overlays Harper's print of the occupation of Alexandria, Louisiana. So during the Civil War, the town of Alexandria, Louisiana was very strategically important. It was occupied twice by the Union troops who were trying to use it as a base to capture Shreveport and the border with Texas. So in the spring of 1863, Alexandria was occupied by Union forces. And again, the following year, on May 13th, 1864, the Union troops decided to abandon Alexandria and set the city on fire. So we are seeing the latter occupation here. 90% of the town burned in what became known as the Red River Campaign. So Walker overlays these familiar Civil War battle landscapes with her own cutouts of African-American figures. The solid Black silhouettes interrupt and haunt the scenes, making them larger than life, ghostly reminders of the violence and oppression endured by enslaved people. This print, as seen in the Collector's Eye exhibition, is an excellent example of the power of Walker's work in a microcosm. And like all of Tom and Joanne's collection, it is a wonderful example of Walker's work. Any questions? I know it was brief. I'm not used to giving talks this short, but it was kind of fun to condense things down.
I have a question for you, Kate. Do we know, did Walker say anything about what she chose to overlay on which prints? We know what set she used and why she used it, but each print has a different silhouette.
Yes, they each have different ones.
Did she mention?
I was not able to find any information on that. I looked really hard through auction records and her website, and I wasn't able to find an explanation of what silhouette went with which print.
I'm not completely surprised because my own experience, with her work is that she leaves much of it to the viewer to interpret.
She's very purposefully enigmatic.
Yeah, very well.
But yeah, I think the two silhouettes, kind of the one body going through the other here, are particularly interesting, especially because this is the Union occupation of a Confederate town. I think it's a really interesting read on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Diane.
It's so interesting. She has so much to say.
All of Kara Walker's work is really fascinating to me. And I've always loved this print of Tom and Joanne's.
Yeah, so eye-opening. It just is so much to learn that we took for granted as junior high kids studying Civil War, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much to relearn and unlearn.
Yes. I'm glad she's the voice for us to start telling that story.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun to put together the research for this.
I bet. I really appreciate you doing it. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
Kate, I would just add also, I think that, where Kara Walker started with her silhouettes, oftentimes life-size figures on the walls, like you showed in your initial photographs. What's interesting is that here she's gone back in time and she's pulled these Harpers out, to kind of draw our attention to the fact that this is what was being fed. The power of Harper's Weekly was, it was, the power of the newspaper, basically. But that it was also the lens through which we saw, or people at the time saw, what was going on. I mean, while these are a lot of images of war, these are not gritty images of war.
Right. No.
That one there of the slave.
No, I was flipping through to find this.
Yes. And so I think she, using her own unique style of the silhouette, is drawing our attention to, these, how war was demonstrated, because there are stories, I don't know how true they are, but there are stories of people driving out to the edge of the battlefield because they thought it was going to be a show.
And bringing picnics. I've heard that.
Picnics and carriages and horses, and they all thought this was going to be a show, that it would be over in a week. And at the same time, it's sort of like, people did not realize what war was going to look like, what war, how gruesome and awful and terrible it is. And you don't really see that here in Harper's, for example. I mean, here's a battle scene going on in front of us, and it's all pretty.
It's very glamorous.
Right.
Yeah, it's all clean. There's no grit. There's no blood. There's no bayoneting. No limbs being torn asunder. But you do get that in like Kara Walker's silhouette, where one body pierces another. That's very, very visceral.
Yeah.
And lost limbs, and that's the viscerality. And the African Americans, the slaves, I should say, lived that viscerality their whole existence in the South. And so she's kind of bringing that home, saying, there are two sets of reality here. There's, the reality as interpreted by Harper's, and then there was the reality of slave life in the United States, and making it very contemporary. I mean, these are not silhouettes that feel dated or old or antiquated. She's done some through her own hands, made them feel very, very contemporary, as if to say, issues of slavery persist today. Many of the things that the slaves endured in the past, African Americans are still enduring today.
They're hugely different from like the 18th and 19th century silhouettes. Kara Walker's work is much more dynamic.
Yeah, and this is so pretty and soft and simple, like the Harpers in a way.
Yeah.
And then she takes that and just really, drives it home, and I think operates on multiple levels at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I so agree, Sean. And it just lends itself more towards Goya or looking at Lazansky's pieces. It's like you just have to look at the horrors of it. And she helps us begin. She opens that chapter. She opens that book for us.
And her silhouettes are somewhat seductive in a way. I mean, in the broadest sense of that term. I mean, they're so beautifully cut. There's such incredible lines in the silhouettes. I mean, that's what you really, I mean, obviously there's the figure, but there's the actual silhouette line that is so interesting. And you're visually drawn into it, and you find yourself sort of sucked into the composition despite the horrors that you sometimes are seeing.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, I mean, that's beautiful work. That's beautiful craftsmanship. The details. I mean, look at the feathers there, or
she never skips on details.
No, I mean, you get so absorbed by it, despite the fact that what you're looking at can be very off-putting.
Yeah. Once you start to actually see what it is, it can be really upsetting.
Yeah.
Like, oh yes. The Gone series is like very upsetting when you actually look at it.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, you just get sucked into the beauty of her silhouettes. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it makes you say, wait, what am I looking at? Hold on, wait.
I know, you're like, oh, it's so beautiful. And then you're like, oh, wait, what am I saying that about?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I know. And I think Tom and Joanne's piece is a really accessible way to start appreciating her art.
Yes, definitely. I'm grateful they put that in the exhibit. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I love that they have it. Well, all right, friends. Thanks for spending part of the evening with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a lovely evening.
You as well.